Welcome to the People, Passion, and Purpose podcast, where you will hear from creative small business owners in the trenches every single day, talking story, talking lessons, talking failures, talking truth. I'm your host, Nina L. Kovner. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome back to the podcast, guys. Oh my gosh, do we have a treat for you today? Oh, this is such a treat. Today, we have one of the most amazing, passionate, beautiful humans that I've had the honor of connecting with online. She's an artist, a master colorist, an educator, the founder of Color Culture and Texture versus Race. The beautiful Keya Neal. Keya, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you so much for having me. This is such a wonderful opportunity, and I'm so excited.
I'm so excited for people to hear your story. That's what this podcast is all about, is sharing stories of creative small business owners like you. And you have created so many awesome brands and movements. And I see you as this just like amazing activist that's like popping up and saying, wake the fuck up, people. And so that's really
exactly what we're saying.
And I love that. I love that. So, but let's kind of, for some context, let's go back to the beginning. And I'd like to know what inspired you to become a hairdresser and educator?
Wow. You know what? I didn't really think that I was going to be a hairdresser at first, to be honest. I went to college first. I thought I would be a journalist. I wrote well in school. And, you know, you're getting A's and B's in high school and you go to college just like C's and D's. I'm like, wait, what? So I'm not good? I'm not good. And my girlfriend, you know, just casually said, you should go to hair school. And I was like, for what? And she says, to do hair. I'm like, for what? For money? And she was like, yeah. And so I thought about it and I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. You know, my mom's a diva, you know, and so I've been around hair and makeup all my life. I just didn't think that was my path. But, you know, they felt like if I was going to go, I needed to go somewhere that was, you know, going to give me what I needed and was going to really, really be a great school or, you know, and I ended up going to Dudley Cosmetology University in North Carolina. And that was probably one of the best things that I could have done for myself. When I got there, I'll admit I was way behind. You know, everybody else was already kind of a kitchen kind of had that innate ability, that natural ability to do hair. And I was just trying to acquire it all. And, you know, they were there for it. They gave me everything that I needed. And, you know, by the time, you know, I got to the end of my course, I was very good and on par with everybody. And but one of the biggest things that they did was encourage and plant the seed of education because they were one of the first African-American advanced educational facilities. You know, they were one of the first to do it kind of, you know, if you will, kind of to modern or pattern after Sassoon and having that advanced education. And so we saw that as basic school students. We saw that, you know, every week we saw stylists with licenses come in to perfect their crafts, and we saw the passion that it took to educate them. And I always knew from the beginning that if I wanted to do it, that I wanted to be, you know, that I wanted to be an educator. So I saw that quite early, you know, the educational piece.
That's so cool because I'm so glad you brought that up because Dudley, obviously, I've been in the industry 30 plus years and Dudley was definitely one of, you know, the biggest in the African American market and one that I was very familiar with. And I love that you had that impact in school with bringing educators in because that's what happened to me. That's why I became an educator, because when I was in beauty school a million years ago, it was the educators that the school was bringing in that made me say like, this is really like interesting. I didn't even know this existed. And it's so cool that we share that history.
You know, I think the more we talk, the more we'll find that, you know, the more we think we're different, we're really more alike. And, you know, that's one of those, that's just the beginning right there, Nina. I can't wait to dive in.
It is. And that takes us to our next, kind of the next thing I wanted to talk about. And as a woman of color, what have been some of your biggest challenges breaking into the pro beauty space? And why is representation and inclusion so important?
Nina, that is a very good question. And I will tell you, I didn't know there was an issue. I didn't have any problems in my own community. I'm going to be honest, for the first maybe 15 years of my career, and I've been doing it about 25 now, but the first 15 years were very, very successful to me according to, where I was functioning and existing. You have to remember, like, you can be a big fish in a little pond. And that was kind of my story. So in my culture in my little corner of the industry, I was doing it big. Like, it was great. I mean, I owned a salon for 10 years and I was banging out. I had the clients book till, Neverary. And, I had the clients, I had everything that went on with it. But, it wasn't until I relocated to Maryland from South Carolina. And I said, I think there's another world that I want to tap into. I want to start doing multicultural hair. And I'll be honest, my aspiration was to be very multicultural, very multi-handed, and I just wanted to expand. And that led me to my first multicultural salon. And when I started working there, and I think I started working at the beginning of 2012, I realized working how far behind I was. As successful as I was on one side and in my culture, I was so far behind, or maybe not even behind, just removed, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I felt like there was a whole nother world that, we weren't privy to. And I realized then, as a woman of color, I needed to work a lot harder to fit in. And that in itself was a problem. One, because the culture was not set for me to fit in, just to adapt. I had to do all the adapting. I had to be the most pliable in the situation, going into that salon. And it was okay because I went there with a purpose. I went there to learn. I went there. I took all of my badges of honor off. Nobody knew I was an educator. Nobody knew that I was a salon owner. I went in just green. Mm-hmm. And I just absorbed everything that I could. And I did. And I learned to do color. I learned to do multicultural hair. They taught me everything from color and hair to patience. And so I think they helped develop me into the woman that I am. But it definitely shed a lot of light on, the differences in the cultures and how we're so separate and segregated, and how there's so much that the African community does not have privy to. There's a lot of information out there, just the way the business exists as well, the modules. And I just really wanted to, bring that to surface, like, hey, taking everybody with me, like, hey, come on, it's a whole new world over here. We should go over here. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how, the color culture started.
Yeah. So I'm so glad you said that, because that was my next question. What inspired color culture? What does it mean? Why did you create it?
So the color culture was born out of that same place that I found myself in when I first moved to Maryland. That salon, really taught me, like I said, that there was a lot of information that was missing from the education that had access to, or just even circulating amongst each other. Okay, that level of education, there was so much information missing, even from the books. Even going to a DCU, I was versed, but I was versed in hair that I was familiar with, and vice versa. So I started to realize that the reason why a lot of African Americans were not doing as much color was because the information and education wasn't intended for us.
Why?
It didn't include
Can I ask you, a very white person? I'm going to be as white as I can be in this moment.
I want you to be as lily white as you can be.
Why do you say that the African American hairdresser, has not been given the color information you needed? Why is that? What is that? What is that? Give us some context around that. Help us understand what that means.
So when you went to school, Nina, did you learn absolutely equally about textured hair when you were in school?
Absolutely not. We definitely did our state board, right? Now I went to school in Falls Church, Virginia, mm-hmm. which was very ethnically mixed. I mean, we had all all sorts of, I mean, every race you can imagine. However, we were taught from the Milady textbook, right? And so I would guess, based on the Virginia State Board and the Milady textbook and the school that I went to, the percentage of time and hours given towards perming, straightening, those types of things versus cutting or coloring. Very small percentage of time.
So like you're saying, right now, that is the exact context and narrative that we have to zoom in on. So when you go to school with the curriculum that's built into the systems right now to just a regular state, funded school, right? Maybe not so much the private, but some of them as well. The curriculum does not support or is not inclusive of textured hair or curly hair in the curriculum from the beginning. So there's already a default of information because everything that we learn in those curriculums are based upon an average client. And that average client is probably wearing somewhere between a level 5 and level 7 hair, straight or wavy. And what you would do with a person in that instance as an average is not the same set of information or instructions or, that's not what I would do for my African American, or let me just say this, my curly textured girls, right? My curly textured hair. I would not use the same level of, I wouldn't apply that same information if it wasn't inclusive of a textured person. And it didn't. So what ended up happening is that when we learned color, we learned it based on, again, that average person. We used those principles, that level of understanding, and we applied it to a client that it wasn't meant for. So we got unattractive results.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
We got breakage. And so now color became our arch enemy.
Yes.
Because it was, oh no, color breaks your hair off if you have curly hair. Color breaks the texture, breaks texture's hair off. And that wasn't so. It was because we weren't managing the texture and the color for what we didn't bring the right information to the table. And it's still not there, Nina. So a lot of times the students, because your school is based on the demographics that it lives in.
That's right.
So your exposure to the students themselves might have been, ethnically diverse,
right?
But your education was not.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Your education was not.
Absolutely.
So now everybody that comes out of school that goes to state board comes out at a default for not being able to do textured hair. And if you don't already have that innately, if you're not already, African American, where you already know about textured hair, all you learned about was straight, wavy, and slightly, swavy hair. You didn't learn about curly and coily textures other than what we knew on our own or from yet the African American community and those educators. So we're already at a default. So even if the students come out, they're going to go to the side that they're most comfortable with.
Sure.
Now, I'll say this. You have more African American students that may go to a school that definitely teaches them well how to do multicultural hair, but they end up in, chain salons, or they end up with multicultural, or maybe a Caucasian salon, and they function well. But how many white Caucasian students come out and say, oh, well, I just want to go to a black salon so I can learn how to do hair?
Yeah.
Very few. And we have to be honest about that. Very few.
Hey, and this is not a new issue. I mean, I was dealing with this as a young stylist, a young educator. I was a brand manager at a distributorship in Maryland. I worked for Davidson Beauty Supply, and I was the Paul Mitchell brand manager. And we had a whole texture division at Paul Mitchell. And I remember this discussion happening in 1987, 88, 89. Wow. And sadly, you're right.
And here we are in 2018. We're still having it.
This is really important. And I'm so glad we're talking about this. Okay. So that leads us to texture versus race, because you keep talking about texture, and you're also talking about the reality that there are African Americans, there are Caucasians, and there are several other ethnicities that are right involved in the hair that we do. And so please explain to us, because there's texture versus race. the statement, like what does that even mean? But then I also want to learn more about, you created this Facebook community that has thousands of open-minded and hearted artists in it. You have a summit coming up. You have an online education program. So let's talk texture versus race.
Okay. So right before we do that, let me kind of hinge it all together. So when I went to when I worked at my school, at my salon, I realized there was so much information missing, again, like we talked about from the curriculum. So color culture was born to go back and really recreate My Lady. So what we do with color culture is we go back to page 1 and we do not take out, it's not a black book. It's not a how to do African-American hair. It is a how to do hair that's inclusive of all textures. So I teach color, but I teach it to the people who have not had the advantage of learning it from the beginning. So it's kind of like it goes back to the remedial page 1, and it brings them all the way up to speed to advanced technology and advanced techniques. So it's kind of color for dummies, but it does bring you all the way up to speed.
But it's
texture you everything
based
that you were missing. No, it's not.
Oh,
it's not texture based. That was the funny thing. It's not texture based. So when I would do trade shows and color culture became such a huge thing, of course, it's wildly popular in my community. Of course, because we're the ones that need it the most. But oddly enough, when I would do trade shows and I started opening it up, Caucasians would fill the room. You all show up early. So, they would be there taking up the first 5 rows of the hair show, because they're like, hey, you need some help unpacking, because they were anxious to see, because they like the curriculum also. So what I'm saying is, it's not that, I'm exclusive to African-American and I have a texture. At the time, I didn't have a texture-specific curriculum. The curriculum was just based to really expose you and really make you understand how color works in its science and in its existence for everybody. But the thing is that what I learned in this process with color culture is that now not all Caucasian people are versed in color. There's this thing that we think that all white people know how to do color and all black people don't. And that is absolutely not true, because some of the questions I'm like, and you've been doing color how long? That's what I'm thinking. But I can tell, because sometimes you could do something wrong consistently. Consistency does not mean that you understood it. It just means you just kind of begat a formula, and you took the formula from somebody else and they gave it to you and you did it until it doesn't work. And it's just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so I realized that there's a huge group of people that want to learn color, truly learn color from the beginning all the way up. That's inclusive to all textures. Now, here's where texture versus race comes in.
Before you start, let me just go back. Language is so important and so interesting, because when I said is color culture texture based, I meant based on texture of hair. Are you teaching color based on texture of hair? Like color for straight hair, color for wavy hair, color for curly hair?
Not at the time.
When I used the term texture, I didn't mean people and I didn't mean race. And it's just so interesting, though, that we could have all of these miscommunications and misunderstandings just based on the language that we use. So anyways, I just wanted to get that out there, because I just think that language is such an important part of this, of making these shifts in your movement. So now texture versus race. Let's break that down.
So last year, I was asked by the American Board of Certified Hair Colors to come bring some education to the summit.
I heard all about your class, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. It was so popular, but let me tell you, that was one of the most unnerving things I had ever done in my career. And I don't know whether it unnerved me more because I knew that I would be in front of a group full of 95% Caucasian people looking at me like, and what is this black girl getting ready to say? And that's just me speaking to myself.
Sure.
Because nobody said that to me. And at any rate, everybody wanted to know. But, there was a little bit of nervousness going into that arena, because I had to step in a place of authority for textured hair, and I never had. And here's why I say that. Color culture was meant to make, African Americans become more comfortable with doing color, period. Hearing it in a way they could understand it, breaking it down into smaller pieces. It wasn't necessarily divided into straight, wavy, curly, swavy, wavy hair, kinky, coily. It didn't get that deep in color culture. It's all about chemistry. period. It did include it, but it wasn't specific for it. But when I was asked to come to the ABCH, they wanted it specifically for it,
Gotcha.
for textured hair. And I didn't know how to do that. For some reason, it was like asking me to teach somebody how to chew. It was like, I don't know. I just put it in my mouth and chew it. Like, I didn't realize I knew there was a method, but I had to recreate a whole new curriculum.
Mm.
And in the beginning of that curriculum, what I realized is that I was writing the same thing that I was writing for color culture. I was just maybe highlighting a few more things and being more specific about the different textures and when to make the shifts. But the biggest problem we had was understanding that most of our problems with color and textured hair didn't really have as much to do with learning how to adjust for the fabric than it was being able to be comfortable with the package that was sitting in the chair.
Ooh.
And that was the whole thing. It was like, I think we're all just uncomfortable with each other because you can learn to do hair. I can teach you, formulas and what to do what and developers and which one and what product does this and what's calibrated to do that. But can I teach you how to not be socially awkward when someone sits in your chair that doesn't look like you? And that was a big issue. And that was something that we tackled at the ABCH. And it was very widely received.
Yes, it was.
Everybody loved it. I didn't expect it to do that. I really didn't. I'm gonna be honest. I knew it would be good because I knew I had, done my work. I had done my due diligence to, bring it to the table. But I think people really wanted to just let out this huge sigh. Like it felt like the whole room just breathed and the whole room just said, we can talk about it. We can have dialogue. And the dialogue was so good. It was so rich and it was so healthy. I think we left better people.
Oh, there's no question.
Know if we left better hairstylists. We left better people.
Well, better people make better hairstylists. I mean, like you said, I mean, so much of what you all do is about that human connection. And so if there's a barrier between the human connection, no matter what a great colorist you are, it's not going to matter if you can't connect. Correct. Let me ask you something, because, we all bring our own perspectives to the table, obviously. And we've all grown up differently.
Correct.
All different races, all different geographical areas. Do you think that some of this fear of being socially awkward, great term that you used, this socially awkward, this uncomfortableness is dependent upon geographics and how you grew up in addition to actual race?
I think it's exposure.
Yeah.
I think it's exposure. I just feel like what you're exposed to, you become, more comfortable with. You have an opportunity to experience it. So I think if we had to say demographically, then I would say, well, any place someone lives that they don't have a whole lot of Black people, I can understand. And that's not really the case. And I can't really compartmentalize it to that, because the social awkwardness happens right here in the DMV area where there's a whole lot of Black people and there's a whole lot of social awkwardness. It's still there. You know what I mean? And I think it's kind of an individualistic type of thing. And, some people, do have that, where did I grow up, seeing, Black people? Well, how were they depicted to me on TV? And here's where we bring in the, what we see on mainstream and what we've been perceived as the status quo or the epitome of beauty. What do we see? Just like how we interpret Africa. Even Black people, we think Africa to a degree is a lot of jungles and people walking around with not a lot of clothes on, when really Africa is one of the most richest, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so by the time it's all about what you're being fed too. Yes. And it brings about a certain amount of stereotype and a certain amount of, the way you think about something it's an unconscious bias that you gain, so to speak. You know what I mean? And it feeds into that. And that's why Texture versus Race was born, so that we could cut through all of that and cut through the fear and empower people in the areas of the least amount of exposure, giving them confidence and knowledge and the skill sets to service clients who don't look like them or do not have the same texture as them. And in order to do that, we got to get in the room. We got to have the conversation. We got to touch and feel and get in the hair and get in the grooves and ask the hard questions. And like you said, let me in my white space ask the white question. Yes, ask it. because the only way we're going to understand each other is if we communicate. And sometimes it does feel a little tough and it will get a little tight. But at the end of that is understanding.
Yeah. And empowerment.
For the whole industry.
Exactly.
For the whole industry. Once we get to a point where we can accept each other for our differences, and we can accept and we can, kind of nurture and massage our, the way we are alike and our similarities, I think that we'll be able to dance this dance together and coexist together. But as long as we're acting like a 7th grade dance where all the boys on one side and all the girls on the other side, I think there's always going to be this huge divide in the middle. And some people are for it. Some people are not, some people aren't. But we're not here to try to change anybody's minds. We're just here to give them an opportunity to grow. That's it. The ones that want to will. And that's just the bottom line.
I love that. So I'm feeling like this is what the summit's all about.
That's exactly what it's about.
Tell us about
bringing
that.
Everybody. So the Texture versus Race Summit is going to be February 10th and 11th in New Orleans. Why New Orleans? Because New Orleans is the home of the gumbo. And gumbo is made of a whole lot of different things, ingredients. It's everything under the kitchen sink to make a beautiful pot of goodness. And I think that it takes all kinds and it takes everybody to make something beautiful.
I love that.
Sticking with that theme, we went to, we decided to take the summit to New Orleans. One of the things that we're going to do is we're going to have a whole lot of conversation around hiring, hosting, and servicing for diversity and making inclusiveness or diversity an action word for inclusiveness. Being able to see it happen in a salon, because you can say, I want to be diverse. But if you're not inclusive, and being truly inclusive means creating a new culture around everybody so that everybody can be comfortable in your space. Being inclusive doesn't mean you give a Black person a job. Being inclusive doesn't mean you give a white person a job. Being inclusive means that you create an environment where everybody can be their best selves and be comfortable in it. And they don't feel like they have to adjust to you.
Right. Well, opening your mind, opening your heart, and taking in new information and new perspectives and new, I love that you brought that up, because I'm just finishing Brene Brown's latest book, Dare to Lead. And she speaks on this. She speaks to this about what real diversity and inclusivity means and why it matters in leadership and culture development. And so I'm so glad you brought that up, because it is so big. So it's in New Orleans. It's in February. Yes. And will you also be doing hair?
So, yeah. So once we have this conversation and we decide we're going to do this together, because everybody's coming and we're going to bust all these bubbles of fear and uncomfortableness, and we're going to get real uncomfortable, and then we're going to get comfortable all over again. And we're going to learn how to punch out. We're going to teach each other how to do everybody's hair. We're touching and feeling everybody's hair. There's no, you can't touch my hair when you get there. Everybody's touching everything. We're showing you, we're giving you all the theory that you need around all textures of hair. That's from straight, wavy, swavy, curly, kinky, coily. We're doing it all. All of the models are live. All of the demos are live.
Wow.
Everything that you do from that point will be live. So it's no mannequins, no mock. It's none of that. We're doing it. We are, you're getting to experience what you don't normally experience. So if you're the balayage queen, you're going to do that good 4C, 4B, 4C curly, kinky hair. That's your models. That's what you're going to do. If you already do the twist out and the spiral sets and the curly coils, then you're going to be doing, the straight hair and the round brushing and the blow drying. Yeah. That's what we're doing. We're getting you to be acquainted with what you already are not acquainted with. Whatever your fear is or where your lack is, we're going to fill that void and we're going to bring you up, and everybody's going to be on a level playing field. We've got some great guest artists coming in. Nina, we've got Miss Christy Ramos coming in. She's doing some curly cutting for us.
She's amazing.
Of course. Yeah, she's amazing. I love her. I just recently stumbled upon her, and I could not get enough of her. And I was calling her salon, like, answer this phone, girl. Because I knew I wanted her there. On that same level, Radically Curly is coming. She's going to be doing some stuff. Yes, Danielle is my girl.
Yeah.
We're going to have Neal is coming with
Tatum's
Elevate Hair
awesome.
as
Yep.
well.
Awesome.
He's coming. He's going to help us facilitate some things. He's hosting an event for us. We're going to have some blow drying technique. Our sponsors, Ergo Tools, they are, they're sponsoring and bringing in some tools and stuff. And they're going to be our tools for the whole summit. They're our official tools for the summit. Of course, the ABCH is heading it all up, because they're front running. That's where we birthed Texture versus Race. So it was only fitting that they, come along and sponsor and be there for us. And, they just want to support. They just want everybody to know that they're for diversity and inclusion. And that's mostly what all of our brand partners are saying. When it comes to sponsorship can mean anything from financial to just, support. And they're just saying, hey, I believe in you. I believe in what you're doing. And they've done that. Hairbrained, they're not going to be there in the flesh because they have a conflict with the date, but they support us, because they sure do. They gave us a platform to do some things. Coastline Enterprise, with Try Hair Care and Tudo Color. They are sponsoring because they feel like, hey, we love what you're doing. We want to be there. We want to help, That's going to be amazing. Brenda Amarell, she's going to be there helping us out, getting it done. I'm trying to think of everybody. Oh, Cavella Hair Care. They're coming out. They're doing some things. We've got a couple of more sponsors that are coming down the pipeline, people that are really connecting with us. And you know why it's really important that we spotlight those particular brands, company, and influencers? And it's because they're the people that are standing up and saying, I'm here for it. I am here for the Texture versus Race. I'm here for inclusion. I'm here for diversity. We're standing for it. We're here. We're supporting you. And I appreciate every single one of them. So
I love that. I love that. Let's, I can't believe we've already been talking for 30 minutes. I have a feeling you and I could go on forever. I just have a couple more questions that I just really, 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 really want to ask you. If you obviously are a change maker. I mean, you're so fucking inspiring. But let me just ask you, so based on kind of everything we talked about, if you could change one thing about the pro beauty space right now, what would it be?
If I could change one thing about the pro beauty space, it would be the inclusion of more African-American educators right now. It would be more African-American models right now. And it would be the exposure that they have for the different platforms. So like, I would love to see more repost and support of the people that do tag and kind of get lost in the sauce. I would love to see more reposts. I would love to see manufacturers and brands utilize the African Americans to speak to all people about things that they're very versed in, and I made that that statement on the hair brain. And I talked about that. I said, it amazes me how, a Caucasian guy will spend all day with a Caucasian girl with long hair creating texture, talking about something they know absolutely nothing about, versus just getting an African American educator and just, to really be able to speak on it. I don't think we have the chance to really speak on it. Like some of the technology, the science, and, the products that are out there, we would love to share our knowledge of it with not only the African American community, but with everybody. You know what I mean? Right. Because we do know it. We are familiar, but we don't get that opportunity because it's kind of thought that we don't really know as much in that arena. So I would love to see more, like I said, more inclusiveness, more representation across all the platforms of social media, on the big stages, in the magazines, the digital magazines, all of that. I would love to see us doing more and being included in more of that.
I agree with you 1,000,000% squared. And what I can say is that you're creating that right now yourself. And you...
oh, great.
I just want you to know that no matter what those people decide to do, no matter what the brands decide to do or the magazines decide to do or whatever, you're creating that right now. You're creating that space. You're creating that opportunity for others. And it truly is you're making such a huge impact, and it's so incredibly inspiring. Okay. Let's talk. I have to jump to quotes. I have to I'm going to start crying if I, okay.
Let's see.
Let's talk about, cause I'm the quote queen. So, do you have a favorite quote?
I have so many quotes because I love to live by, the words of affirmation, things that stick with me. But the one that I would say in this particular instance would be one that I think I'm not going to say I think it's my quote, but it was inspired by Miss Olive Benson. And she was one of the first African-American women to pioneer in the broad mainstreams, of Sassoon and with the likes and going to London and doing hair. And she was the first one to really pull out and say, and to stand up and say that hair was not a fabric. Hair was not a race. It was a fabric. And that's pretty much what I'm going to stick with. And I think that, if we learned that hair was a texture, and it was a fiber and not a race, I think that we would learn to see color differently.
That's beautiful.
And I'm not talking about hair.
Yeah, I feel you. Keya, where can we find you? I know you're all over the internet. I want everyone to join your Facebook group too. So share all your socials with us. So
on Facebook, the group itself is Texture versus Race. It's very easy.
Okay.
Myself, Keya Artistically, Neal, the color culture, all of that is on Facebook.
And color culture is with a K. Color culture with a K.
It's KOLOURKULTURE.
Awesome. On the gram.
So color culture.
And
on
Facebook.
The gram, we have the color culture, Texture versus Race, and Keya_artistically.
Awesome. Keya, thank you for being.
This has been amazing.
Passionate for being.
I am.
For changing the game, for opening the door, starting the conversation, being an activist, bringing everyone together, for all of those things and more. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Miss Nina. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your listeners and to just be able to talk to you. I know that when I see you, we're going to continue this.
Yes, we are.
Because there's so much more to talk about.
There sure is.
We're going to have to sit down and, grab us some appetizers or something. I know I'll be seeing you soon.
That sounds
amazing.
I'll
be seeing you soon. I'm all about food. I'm foodie. I'm a foodie. So and we're going to talk again. But thank you, my friend, for having me.
Thank you so much. And for everyone listening, thank you so much. Be sure to check out the Texture versus Race Facebook group. You can just observe, you can dive in, you can learn, come with an open heart and an open mind. And be sure to check out the Texture versus Race Summit next year in New Orleans.
And you know what? Just real quick, I forgot to mention textureversusrace.com and colorculture.com. All the information about everything that we're doing is online.
Awesome.
Textureversusrace.com. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Keya. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. To learn more about Passion Squared, you can visit us at passionsquared.net. You can find us on the gram and on Facebook at Passion Squared. And be sure to subscribe and share with your friends. We're so grateful. Thank you so much for joining us. Have an awesome day, guys. Love you.